Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the official Rockwell Records podcast, brought by me, your host, Fabian Rockwell. In this episode, and yes, I'm assuming that by the title of this episode, it's kind of obvious that we are going to talk about Lana Del Rey's newest album, Did You Know That There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard? Gosh, I have been dreading to have to say that. For all good reasons, obviously. It is a very long title. But yes, if you guys have been following me, you know that I am a pretty big fan of Lana, so I'm not going to talk about a bunch of things and get everybody annoyed with that conversation. But we are here to have a deep dive conversation about her latest record. And it's because there are so many things that kind of struck me in this album that I kind of feel like I need to talk about. As a fan, I need to talk about these things. So I appreciate anyone who's taking the time to listen to this particular episode, but I do hope you enjoy this conversation. So first we're going to listen to the songs, and then we're going to break them down. Once we're done with the entire album, I will attempt throughout as well to connect any paralleling pieces to albums, records, and things like that. So this really is for us, the fans, and just anyone who's in general kind of really interested. But let's get started. Lana had a track called The Grants. Now, to give you guys a thorough, in-depth review, I am going to listen to each song, and I'm going to highlight the notes, the lyrics, the story, the whole body, okay? To start this conversation, I would like to kind of talk about the title, the album cover itself. It's gorgeous. And I actually just noticed that on Apple Music, if you guys are Apple Music users, Apple does have a sense of visuals, but they are so simplistic with records, so it's kind of hard to tell. Lana's album starts off as a base picture, and the title and list of features and producers who worked on the record, they all fade in onto the picture. It's really, really pretty. But anyways, the cover itself was inspired by 60s female records, and it's a very beautiful. It's very difficult to play with fonts nowadays, and I feel like not make it look like it's somebody's marketing. So it's executed really nicely that it's an actual cover and there's a vibe to it, and just the entire photo shoot aesthetic that we've gotten this entire time. It's been almost like a privilege to see, considering the last two records didn't have too much visual context. It's really funny that I say this right now because she has 0 music videos for this record, but all of the magazine photo shoots and everything were so inclusive almost that I kind of feel like we've gotten the aesthetic of what the record is, if that makes any sort of sense. But that's kind of my feelings towards the cover. I think that there's a lot of alternate covers. She is a big artist to do this with her records, is have, additional artworks available. But normally they're Urban Outfitters exclusive was a thing. Target exclusives are a thing, or maybe an indie shop exclusive, or maybe, I don't know. It's just interesting. So I do enjoy the options, and maybe maximum 3 covers. I think 2 covers at most. An original and an alternate is fine. After that, it starts to give it a spread feel. Let's begin with track by track. The Grants. I think that the intro of the Grants, with just the introduction to the record not being her voice, really speaks for something. And it's so that you can focus on the lyrics and the overall theme of what the album is. I'm gonna take mine with you, with me. And they repeat it. Mine, say it again. Mine of you with me. And it almost sounds like mind of you with me, but it's not. It's mine of you with me. And so they repeat this, and you don't know what they mean by that. So we'll get into it, but I do think that this is essentially a central theme to the record. So we'll talk about it in a sec. As far as the song and sound, there's obviously something very cinematic and poetic. You immediately get the piano within, this first track, so you can kind of already predict that this is going to be a very cinematic sound. And we have gotten that before. Lana has given us cinematic sounds. She did it with Young and Beautiful. She made an entire record. Honeymoon was very cinematic in that way, and sweet and airy. There's a heaviness to this one. If you hear it, you'll hear it throughout the album if you were to listen to it. But there is something that's not so sweet and airy, but a little bit more like murky. It's because there's like layers essentially to this. So the Grants is a hell of an opening compared to like Did You Know, the title track, and A&W. The Grants was a little difficult, I would say, to grow with. However, at this time, I don't know. It's a insanely beautiful like opening. You don't want it to be too churchy or anything like that. However, there is religious element to the record. There is religious element to Lana herself. There is spiritual elements to it as well. But the song itself it's so intelligent with like the transitions of it, like the very intro not being her voice to the end where what they're saying about in the beginning isn't addressed till almost towards the end of the song. And then Lana reveals that mine of you with me means memories. I want to take these memories of you with me. And there is a newfound sense of importance with family relationships and family ties. And it's interesting that this is a record that comes out at this time of life when people are learning to be so connective with one another, especially their relatives. It's something that I challenge myself to be better at, be more there for my family in a sense as well. So it's interesting that like these are the themes that are throughout this album, things that you want to work on in your life or should work on because family is most important. You would find it like, I don't know, I guess like as a teenager, very like cringe to like feel this way. But as you get older, you really start to value that time that you have with those who have shown you love throughout your life and who has not shown the most love towards, one another other than your family. So it's almost like a wake-up call. And there was something that I noticed throughout Lana's past couple of albums that she does talk about, and it's, ensuring that she had these memories. We're going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, so I'm going to come back to this subject. But the main takeaways from this song is how beautiful the production is, the use of like these elements to kind of foreshadow what is else in the record. Like a lot of these sounds I think are detrimental to the rest of the record. You're going to hear a little bit more of what that church energy was, or not the, I don't even want to say that, what the choir energy was. You're going to get more of the piano, you're going to get more of these lyrics, and you're going to get more about what family is. And she talks a lot about life and death in this one as well. So, what is that? You know, those are kind of like the main themes. And I don't know, it's just all very fitting. So, I have just really grown to appreciate that track itself as an opening in its entirety. Like, it's crazy. I want to point something out here before the rest of the record comes in. How this record starts and how it ends is completely different, because I think that it really tells a story instrumentally from top to end. But let's get into that. The next song that we're going to talk about is Did You Know That There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard? This is a song to break down. Let's talk about instruments. You can hear it right away. I didn't notice this actually upon my past listens, but there is a drum beat the entire time. And it's a very soft, like, doo-doof, doo-doof. It's very much heartbeat-like. And I think it's kind of where the heart of this album is supposed to be, is within this title track. I feel like a lot of Lana's albums, the title track is so special because it's what she named the entire body of work after. So I do think that it's something to kind of point out here. There's also a lot of instrumentation that is very new. Like, in one ear there's like violins, and in the other ear is like constant piano, and in the other ear is, you know, like a drowning out, like a pulling almost. It's a lot going on. And then you also have like notes of the motorcycle and like revving and stuff, and like this plays really heavily into the photo shoots that I mentioned before. Like, she was on a motorcycle, and it's this like murky energy. I don't know how to explain it. They do it so well here because that's not throughout. That sound begins to play in when she's describing this specific experience when she went under the tunnel. So she's like letting us know, like, there's this tunnel, and she's using the tunnel as a metaphor for her life. And it's very nostalgic in a way, the feeling that she's describing. But what struck me the most is in her lyrics. Now, in the lyrics, you know, there's a part where she mentions this artist, and she says, at this time, 202, there's something about the way he says, quote, don't forget me, quote. And the entire song, she's singing, you know, don't forget me, there's a tunnel. So it just ties this whole thing in together, that like, this is truly about like, I wish I had a friend like him to give me fire. Like, that specific moment in that song gives me fire. It's in comparison to this tunnel. It's in comparison to this metaphor that we're talking about her life. And, you know, she's asking, when is it going to be her turn? You know, and she's saying, like, don't forget me, don't forget me. It's really sad because she almost ended the opening track on this note as well. And these two lines and endings, you know, really made me feel like these specific moments were for her fans and her people. She doesn't want to be forgotten. I promise you, Lana, you will not be forgotten, no matter the case, good or bad. And in the title track, she says, you know, she's ending like all of this stuff about the memories. Wow, okay, we're having epiphanies, guys. If we go back real quick to the Grants, she's talking about her memories, and she gets real specific in the end, talking about her sister's baby's child, you know, her sister's birth, and she was there for that. More about that conversation later. And then her grandma's last smile, her grandma passed away. I'm going to take that with me. And she ends this with, "It's a beautiful life. Remember that too for me." And I feel like she's speaking to fans, her audience, and her people that she wrote this for. She wants all of us, in her words and her experience, that life is beautiful, ultimately. And then in, Tunnel, she's saying, "Don't forget me." She like puts emphasis on this. It's emphasis on the way this guy sang the song and the impact that the way he sang that had on her. She is trying to have an impact on us, or who she can, essentially. There are some very familiar sounds in the production in this song, but it's towards the end of the track. And I feel like these are seeds and blueprints to how the record flows. So I feel like that is something that I'm just going to point out right now. We go into this next song called Sweet. And you guys, I had a very good experience going to the listening party. I did go to a listening party. This is like the first time Lana has done this as an artist, at least in my recent memory, that she held a global listening party into local record stores on a very specific day. So I was able to go. I'm not going to hype that experience up or anything. All I'm going to say is I appreciated being able to go and not hear feedback from anybody and just let this record sit with me, because I really needed it, and I'm sure everyone else might have needed it as well. With Lana, there's almost nothing to ever expect. We go into this track, Sweet. And the reason I brought up the record store is because Sweet was one of the most forgotten songs in my experience upon first listen. And I'm disappointed in myself for that, because Sweet is a very special song. So let's talk about it a little bit. So there's this experience that Lana has had within the Midwest that is like almost unspoken of. All I can tell you guys is it was really special and life altering. She kind of speaks on it here that she is a different woman, like just completely. And she was saying like what didn't get said in the Midwest. What was said in the Midwest was, something we don't know, but she wrote a letter, and essentially I think the essence of this song was that letter, and it's to somebody she was in love with, one of her relationships. And she's kind of talked about things like this before, like, you know where to find me. Like, I feel like it's very like reminiscent of California, like that song. But it's really nice because she's saying like, I'm a sweet woman, essentially, and that's something that you're not ready for or don't want, but the door is open and I'm giving you access to where that might be. This person, almost like it's a letter that she wrote, is giving this person the pieces of where to find her, and they are in places that are also sweet, the way that she describes herself. So in the night, in the woods, she's saying like, I'm not your average bitch. I want something real. And one line she says, she only mentions it once, is that we've been making out a lot. And it's almost like that's all we're doing. Like, I need more things. She's like, do you question yourself? The real questions, the real hard questions that we have to ask, the real conversations that we need to have. And that's also something so important in my life. I feel like a lot of people lack connectivity with one another. It's why I would encourage social media breaks for people, just for your mental health alone, just to be able to refocus from time to time and just know that like your genuine connections with people is what makes, life worth living. It's not about living online. It's not about living on of any of those things. So anyways, it's even one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast is because I hope that I can connect with people on a level of things that I enjoy, and I hope it sparks conversation. I hope it sparks interest. Like, these are the real things, guys. But anyways, that's what the essence of this song is, and it's just beautiful, like, she's like, do I want children? Do I want any of that? Whatever. But you can find her in California. You can find her in the North Country. The Midwest became her home at a time. And the Midwest is another conversation topic about this record, that a lot of themes are introduced so far. We've had a couple of different layers. We've had sounds brought up. We've had themes, lyrically brought up, and all that stuff that really gets unpacked. So let's chat about A&W, other known as American Whore. You can't hear it, but she laughs right before the song starts. It's so subtle. So you're about 3 minutes into, almost 4 minutes, like 3 minutes and 40 seconds into it when you hear the first heavy production beat. So this is a good point to kind of actually talk about the first half, because it's about the American Whore segment. So it's like the blunt of the lyrical content. But she brings up cartwheels, childhood. She also makes a comment about being a princess, also childhood. I haven't seen my mother in a long time. I mean, look at me, look at the length of my hair. My face, the shape of my body. Do you really think I give a damn what I do after years of just hearing them talking? This context could be about the media, what people have had to say about her. And she highlights, I mean, look at me, the length of my hair, face, shape of the body. Based off of that imagery, what do you see? What does the media say about women who look like this, right? This is very important for later. Also, love the mommy, like the mom trauma. Thanks. So anyways, what I do after years of hearing them talking. She's saying I live in Rosemead. Really, I live at the Ramada. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, it's okay. She's saying she calls him up. So she has this relationship with this person, and it's not a good relationship. Like, she's like watching these things. This song is about asking yourself the hard questions, right? She's in a place where she's asking herself the hard questions. You know what? Like, fuck it. I'm just going to have sex, so whatever. You call over a guy, right? Kind of energy. She's saying she knows she's over her head, and then at the end of it, like, this is the experience of being an American whore, and then she tells you something more serious, that if she told you she was raped, do you think anybody wouldn't think I didn't ask for it? And she won't testify because she already fucked up her story. I want to make like a special shout out here. There is YouTube. It's Therapist Reacts to A&W by Lana Del Rey. She did a wonderful breakdown of this. I would highly recommend everybody kind of check that out. But it is something to speak about, think about, and everything. Just the fact that women, based on this information, their image and everything, and their situation, that they know that they won't win. And that's just not okay. So I do think that, like, this is something that should be highly talked about. It's intense. So it's like some serious shit. I think like the biggest reflection she has in this song, though, is like, it's not about having somebody to love me anymore. It's interesting. Like, it's not about having somebody to love me. And this experience with this person is the experience of being an American whore. And then the like one time she phrases it is, did you know a singer, me, like a famous person of all people, could still look like a side piece based off all this information I told you to men? Like, I'm just this thing on the side, even now. It's it's a lot to unpack, basically. And musically, the flow, it's a slow burn track, and I am highlighting that as well for a reason. Man, the distortion, like instrumentals, just sounds like really otherworldly. Wow, guys. A&W is a masterpiece. It's so crazy, like the seriousness of the first beat and then this complete switch up, and you go from this almost soft instrumental kind of thing to very intense heavy production. There's also debate online that the final drop into, that last bit of where we get the repetitive lyrics, Jimmy Jimmy, that it should have been a bit heavier, or there should have been a little bit more to that drop. I've kind of studied like the flow of the song. I don't think I agree with that. I do think it's a good drop, because if it did go up higher to drop even lower, there's a thing of like doing too much, So I do like where it was, and it's just funny like how serious it was, and then very like classic Lana almost. She like switches up and shows her fans like, I can really do this still if I wanted to, but I don't need to do it for everything. And a lot of that is wrapped up into that like last 2-minute chunk. And really the heaviness of it in A&W is about like a minute and a half. So it's just really fun. It's very campy. The lyrics go to like, you almost have no idea what she's talking about, but she's like completely bringing this man down because of how he treated her. So it's really funny to see. It's almost comical, but it's really fun to sing it as well at the same time. So because it's almost like nonsense, but it's playful. It's just a really something else. And I do think that A&W, the track itself, is the blueprint for how the rest of the album goes. I think from title track to A&W, you're going to get that experience repeated, but on a larger scale. We go into Judah Smith Interlude. The interlude is interesting. It adds to the choir aspect, the aspect of the church, and the aspect of religion, which has always been a part of Lana's music, but very heightened here, considering, Lana's personality, and she's really dove into, deeper parts of herself, and what I feel like the message of, what the preacher is saying, Judah Smith, it's essentially, again, the importance of family, and like your life, your good life that you're looking for is there for you. Don't let the infatuations pull you in. And it's something that the preacher brings up again later. And ultimately at the end, what he says is, I'm going to tell you the truth. I've discovered my preaching is mostly about me. That I used to think his preaching was about others, but it's not. And it's because ultimately what we all look for is answers for ourselves, and what you find can be shared and helpful for others. So it was really interesting to hear what the context of this, preach was about. I'm a very non-religious person myself, but there are, ways that you look. There are, other beliefs that everyone has. I respect it. So I really respected including this in the record. I think it elevates and heightens the vibe and elevates the understanding of what the message is here, essentially, especially in this little project of hers. Next, we're going to talk about this track. It's another song. It's called Candy Necklace. I also want to add how this is the most eccentric list of titles we have gotten. You would never put all of these titles together and think that's going to be a cohesive story, but proven wrong. White Fire, Cinnamon on My Teeth. This is the first very callback to Norman Rockwell we get. is in this lyric. The piano is so haunting in this song. It's funny, right here in this part of the song, she's singing, she's been feeling super suicidal, which is almost, This Is Me is like crazy, but almost a Marina and the Diamonds kind of thing. I don't know. It could be me reaching. Part of this could be delusional. I may have biased opinions about this for that reason, but I don't know. Anyways, when she's singing this particular verse, she's saying, hate to say the word, but baby, hand on the Bible, I do, as if she's a phrase that's almost like, if I'm getting married, is bringing, but you're the one who's bringing me down, which is also a lyric that Lana has said before. In the background, while she's saying this, you've got subtle Born to Die like instrumentals. It's the tiniest thing, but it's like a poke almost. That's it. It's gorgeous. Candy Necklaces is one gorgeous track. The song itself is instrumentally very haunting, and I do think I mentioned this. It's just the depth of the piano and the consistency of that, and there's also a really heavy feeling with it, with just how she's singing it, and then the addition of Jon Batiste, his voice just only singing that part towards the end, especially after the piano solo in the song, which is something that really reminds me of like the Allerdale Hall soundtrack from Crimson Peak. Just that very dark feeling, and the piano can sell that emotion like no other. It's just, it's very good. And then at the end, when they're just singing Candy Necklaces itself, you can hear all these other like random instrumentals, but they're not random, and it can feel like a lot at once. But it's just it's so smooth. It's such a dark track. I really invite everyone to kind of let that song just take you, no matter where that may be. But yes, Jon Batiste also has an interlude immediately after that track. This interlude really makes me feel like, and I didn't get this before, but it really makes me feel like this is supposed to be the feeling of a memory, and this just might be how Lana feels about memories, because this very much sounds like a conversation between John and Lana, but while maybe they were in the studio, like she's harmonizing a little bit, they're playing back around a little bit with the lyrics, and it's just that it sounds like a very start of something. Like this could be a potential song that maybe they were working on, but it didn't get made into a song, and instead it was made into this interlude and this perspective of a memory that she was having with John particularly. But the instrumentals of the piano like really continue and drag out the like darkness and almost heaviness that Candy Necklaces kind of had. And it's very piano heavy, and it's like, yeah. You know what's funny? They end the lyrics on sweet honey, and it's kind of a callback to Sweet. Like John is finally a guy that's saying like, oh sweet honey, like he's talking a lot of, I don't know, I could be reading too much into that, but that's kind of the energy I feel towards that track. And it kind of like, it's pulling like details that we've gotten back into the storyline, the themes, the lyrics, all of it, the sound of it, like it's crazy. Then there's Kintsugi. This is like a highly lyrical content track. It's a very slow song, but it's beautiful. Like, it's just piano, her voice. It's like almost all the instrument you need, really. It's just really heartbreaking to hear what she's singing about, because this is the first like relative heavy track she brings up, and in her process of healing, she's discovered and come to realizations, and hard ones, that she admits she wasn't there for the birth of two of her nieces and nephews, but she was, and made it a better priority to be there for the birth of her, sister's third child. So I just think that's for something like really heavy and adult to kind of talk about. And the truth is that, like she said, I don't trust myself with my heart. And I think that speaks for a lot of people, including me, who do find it difficult to reintegrate this and re-show the people that you love, like, that they are important to you, that you do love them. And that, like, you need a little bit of this brokenness in order for the light to re-enter. You can't reach these levels of positivity and growth if you didn't have these, moments of low. She also, brings up the conversation about her grandmother. She obviously was there to witness her grandmother's passings. And it's these two specific moments, the birth of her sister's child, the death of her grandma. This song is very much for her family, and it's, I think, kind of a way maybe for even them to understand where she's coming from. But then she starts singing, she's bringing up these moments and memories about her family, and then she's talking to her dad, like, Daddy, I miss them. And truthfully, I just think she's, she's running away a little bit from the feelings that she gets when she thinks about everything. But she lets the light get in, and then she starts talking about, she had this moment in March. This is probably when she felt a breakthrough. And then she became this being of, light that she's able to give to others. And she's saying that, there's a specific spirit in Japanese, called kintsugi. That's kind of what I'm getting from that. But yeah, so it's interesting because the song is really just a melody, and she almost is saying that these folk songs, she kind of just made one herself, essentially. I don't know. It's just gorgeous all around, and I feel like we should be really grateful that we even got that shared with us. The next song is called Fingertips, another quite heavy, quite personal track. It's like a continuation of family, and, but now we're talking about different people, specifically her brother and sister. She mentions Charlie, that was her brother, and Caroline, who's her sister. Is the baby going to be okay? She brings up the topic of motherhood. She wants a baby, but she also, so real about this, can she even handle it? And I feel like that's the question we all ask ourselves. It said that my mind is not fit, or so they said, to carry a child, which we soon is revealed that her mom is the one who said these things. But it wasn't my idea. It's the cocktail of things that twist neurons inside. But without them, I die. And that's so good because it's like a real play on mentality and mental issues and health, that our minds really do twist things, and we do have perceptions, and the way that we think, we can't help it. It's just the mind that we were given sometimes. And that this plays into the irony in the music. It's a tragedy. She sees nothing Greek in it because there's Greek tragedies. Beautiful lyric writing, by the way. But without those, you would die, because those are also kind of what you use as survival skills, in a sense. It's crazy. This section is crazy because she's talking about a death. Give me a mausoleum in Rhode Island with Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, and Dave. Dave, who hung himself real high in the national park sky. It's a shame, and I'm crying right now. So it's a person who hung themselves. And she's saying if she takes her life and uses her astral body, which also the specific line brings up a subject that Lana is both probably religious and spiritual, and they're probably both integrated pretty well in her, personality, which is very interesting. I'm here for it. I love that 100%. But she's saying if she uses her astral body and put it into her eyes, she can give Dave 2 seconds to cry, 2 seconds of comfort, to be by the TV. It's crazy because this is also very memory-like with the piano and the violins and the cinematic energy. So it's like that this is just another memory she's recollecting on, but this one is the specific matter of death that she kind of points out earlier in the album, like she brought up memories and now we're experiencing those memories, and this one is her relationship with death, that body that she's seen, and what she's saying in this experience is almost like maybe she wasn't there when it happened, but her experience with it was like, I was singing for the prince because that's where she had to be instead of somewhere important, which was with family, and it goes back to the topic of like she hasn't been there for her family a little bit. This is an insane album. Yeah, but anyways, it's a lot to unpack. So, and she closes it off with "It's a shame that we die." And it's interesting because she's had such a growth with her perspective on death. And so, like when she was saying, should I take my life? It wasn't like a suicidal thing. Even though she's mentioned that in the last song, it's more of a like, if I did that to help you, to bring you comfort, it's so tough. She does bring up this, I don't know how to take it, but I personally took it as she said she was naked when her neighbors did a drive-by and they pulled her by the waist. It's very uncomfortable to talk about, and it's like, I don't know. This was a very young experience for her. It sounds like this was a very early life experience. She then is again talking to her sister and brings up the conversation about her mother, and this is where she expands on it a little bit. But she says, what kind of mother was she to say I'd end up in institutions when all I wanted to do was kiss Aaron Green and sit by the lake twisting lime into the drinks that they made? And have a babe at 16, the town I was born in, and die. It's like she's almost reminiscing on this almost regular life she was supposed to have, that she was going to marry like her high school sweetheart, Aaron, have a kid with him at the 16, and, grow up where she was born and raised in this area. So, and what's wrong with her to send me away? Exotic places and people don't take the place of being your child, meaning her mom kind of left her for, life experiences. And then she goes to saying, I would give myself 2 seconds to cry, actually. And, then she picks herself back up, talking about, call me Aphrodite as they bow down to me. She's a sunbather, moon chaser, queen of empathy. She is a Cancer. So she gets her 2 seconds to breathe and go back to being a serene queen. I just needed 2 seconds to be me. And it's like, there's this new version of her, but then there's this version of her that she was when she was growing up, and, that's still her. So that's a roller coaster of a song. That's a lot to unpack, man. I'm gonna definitely have to watch and see if the YouTuber that I mentioned to you guys earlier has her reaction to that, or maybe what she said to that, because that really is a very, very in-depth personal song, and that really is a lot to unpack. But man, it's really crazy the way that, like, in the one of the very first 2 or 3 songs, she mentioned these things about memory and all that, and it's in the grants. It's in the very first song, and here they are. It's almost like an essay, like an intro, and then the body. This is like that mid chunk. It's crazy, and I hate that I made that comparison right now, but I'm telling you guys, it's like a blueprint. It's a geniusly integrated album, like, so far. Then we go to Paris, Texas, which is a very familiar piano beat. A lot of people are kind of saying it reminds them of Coraline, which I do see that comparison as well. But this particular harmony, I feel like I've heard somewhere, and it is sampled from this artist, SYML. I don't want to mispronounce that, but there is somewhere that I have heard this. This song, though, is very reminiscent, and it also was in another track in the beginning, kind of Candy Necklace, that was very Silent Hill. It's this haunting experience. But anyways, this track, let's talk about it a little bit. I want to kind of bring up a subject that's, kind of midway through the song. Well, the flow of it, it's almost like this journey, and I can't tell if this is her experience from kind of her travels, throughout this time while she's kind of been traveling through the Midwest and stuff, or if this is her story from when her journey to California. But I want to say, because she said she flew back home, and home in this narrative is California for her, that it's from her time she left California. She used to sing about she wanted to leave LA. She didn't belong there. That, she went on this experience, and, once everybody gets to a certain point, like, it's time to go. And she went back to California. So she knew, like, that there were places she went and visited and she didn't belong. So when she flew back home, that everything was the same in Venice, except that, whoever this relationship isn't home. When you're home, you're home. When you're alone. So when you're alone, you're basically home. And, she's basically saying she's home and she's alone. But she's also speaking towards a person. When you're right, even when you're wrong. And she called to know why. Interesting. It's a very interesting song. It's also a lot to unpack, because it's very much like, it could be in the perspective of she's talking to herself. She had this experience, you go home, you do that. You're right. When you're wrong. Because when you're home, you're alone. It's just such a play on words. It could mean multiple different things, but I don't know. It feels very like it was meant to be alone. I wonder if this is a piece for herself. Okay. Grandfather, please stand on the shoulders of my father while he's deep sea fishing, featuring RIOPY. This is such an interesting way to open up, because she's talking about herself. It kind of goes back into the context of, the Aphrodite lyric, that she's this very beautiful, beautiful thing, and it must have took all these people to put her back together, when in reality, it was herself. And also, I feel like it goes back to talking about, like, she wasn't able to handle herself in the way that maybe her mom thought she wasn't able to handle herself, but she is okay, and she is beautiful because she's just a beautiful person. This is, I'm actually kind of realizing something here, but she mentions God, like, she's asking God to send her 3 white butterflies. Butterflies is a constant theme in her music. Also, another lyrical callback, not just cinnamon, we also have butterfly now, and yeah, and beautiful. If you guys are thinking of past albums, But she's asking God, to send her something so she has some sort of answer that he's listening. But in another sense, she talks a little bit more spiritually. She switches up. She asks her grandfather, who I'm, assuming has passed away, to be with her father while he's deep sea fishing. And she's letting everybody know, I am a good spirit. So there was that point where she let us know that she had her breakthrough kind of moment, her moment of, I have to change. There's positivity. And so now she's letting us know she is in good spirit. Now she is, such in good spirit. She's warm body. She looks at herself and views herself as a goddess. She's folk. She's jazz. She's blue. She's green. Regrettably, also a white woman. But I have good intentions, even if I'm one of the last ones, because this is a speak, and I wasn't sure if I was really going to talk about this or not, but I am. This is a big tangent, but I have to allow this one to happen. Is we all know that there was a complication with Lana Del Rey, and I firmly believe that there should have been some acknowledgement towards when she released Question for the Culture. It stirred up big controversy around Lana Del Rey. It was a time. And I do think that there should have been acknowledgement from her. She has spoken about things in the best way that she has possibly could, and, kind of handled this. I can only imagine how hard it is for a woman just in the industry alone, kind of what it takes to, recover from the situation particularly. Do I agree with how she said things? No, I don't. And that's why I do seriously vouch for acknowledgement, or there should have been something, but I don't think it would have came across genuine to people. So I think here this kind of speaks towards that. She might view herself a little bit as a god, or she's found herself in a really good position in life that she's learned and grown and experienced, which is nice and reassuring to know that, the older you get, you're still going to have life challenges and you're just not always going to have it together. But she is openly admitting, I am a white woman, and essentially, regrettably, she's made mistakes, and maybe it's not her favorite thing, but she has good intentions, even if she's one of the last, white people to do that. So that's actually a really crazy lyric that I just now caught, and it actually reassures me a lot that she made this sort of acknowledgement. I don't know how else to explain that, but that makes me very happy. And if you don't believe me, my poetry and my melodies, feel it in your bones. It took someone else to make her beautiful, wonderful as they intended her to be, but they're wrong. Wow. This is a fucking beautifully gorgeous song. What a brilliant fucking song, guys. There's also a play on the instrumentals towards the end, right before she says 3 last butterflies one last time, that all of these sounds and instruments are subtly trying to break through. You can almost hear them piecing together, but don't really know where they belong with each other. And I think that's really impressive. It's this chunk. It's this almost it's that builds up. And it was also in some other songs that towards the end, it was instruments, I mentioned it before. I cannot remember the track, but we're nearing the end of this record. So I appreciate anyone who has stayed with me and stuck with me this far. I even have to congratulate myself for sticking through this one, because it is a long ass album. But the next song is called Let the Light In. So let's figure it out. The other thing I want to note on that previous song is that the instrumentals that, she kind of plays around with the piano and the violin and all of that really consistently plays on this idea, this almost innocence of childhood, like the princess. It feels very Disney princesses is stuck with her in this kind of realm, but it becomes so dark, and then swings back around through like eras essentially. Let the Light In is kind of this pull back from all the heaviness, all the memories. We're jumping back into the subject of the light itself. You know, we've already established that Lana feels that she is the light herself, and so she's come back into this kind of relationship that we got bits and pieces of in the beginning, that they're back at it again, like they're fooling around again, like she came back to California, and they're back on this thing. And I feel like that's really interesting to kind of bring us into, but it's a beautiful song. And this song features Father John Misty, who, you know, they did the Buddies Rendezvous, and that was just like such a good pairing. And so I was really happy that this was another great track from them. But it's just really nice that she retied in the elements of the light. I don't know, it's just this very positive thing, and the kind of person she is, she just loves. And I've got nothing to do but respect it, honestly. And she talks about these things again. The whole being with your boyfriend and watching TV is like a very like common theme for her as well. Impressive. I just love how she just is wrapping everything in, like, it's so perfect. This is the next song called Margaret, and it is another love song. But this is very, like, this would be a beautiful wedding song. It really would. The problem is this is so clearly a wedding song, specifically for Jack and his wife, or girlfriend, but I just love that she did this for him. This is the first track as well, Margaret, and you can hear it in the production, is a very direct callback to Norman Rockwell. And this is why I've been kind of mentioning hints throughout, like, the review, that there have been subtle hints of Norman Rockwell throughout in the production, but it was just introduced very early on in the beginning with Tunnel itself towards the end. And then there are very, very like light sprinkles throughout some moments in the album, but not quite as direct in the beginning. But this finally ties in like the production from A&W, like that punch and that pact. It's like, this is where the use of like Norman Rockwell's instrumentals really like pulls that through as well. But it's really nice that they did that. And that song specifically was Love Song as well. So it's really nice that this is a new love song. They kind of use the instrumentals of the track, and it's for, you know, somebody that, you know, Jack really loves. So I love that. God, you guys, this song is just, it was so impressive. The intro of this song is written like a memory, you know, kind of how we've been talking about, but it's a memory of Jack specifically, and this is how well of a story writer Lana is. She's writing about someone else's memory in that first experience, and then it's almost comical when she's like, his feeling was, I might be in trouble. Should I jump off this building now or do it on the double? And it's like a funny nod to like when you first get a crush and you're like, oh fuck, like what do I do? You know? Excuse my language. I don't know. I really like that detail. And then the chorus is when you know, and this is highly repeated, and it's really interesting that in the song, which one was it? In the song Tunnel, again, very intro of the beginning, she's letting you know a theme. This is another element. Like, this is what I'm saying, like, that first, you guys, like, everything just, it's like push and pull with this album because there's just so many damn parallels. It's crazy. But she says Harry Nilsson has a song his voice breaks at 2:05. It's something about the way he says don't forget me. In that song, she's saying don't forget me. And I've been trying to figure out why there's a lot of repetition in this record, more than a lot of others. But, you know, she repeats a lot of words like sweet. She even repeats words. Let the Light In, she was very repetitive with. When you know is very repetitive. And now in Margaret, it's back to when you know. And it's this reminder that there's a way that she is saying things that she wants us to remember. That's crazy to me. This is a beautiful song. I do think Margaret is one of my favorite songs, and Bleachers is a wonderful band. So the fit here is unbelievable. I want to talk about this segment here. You know, he brings up this point, Bleacher's perspective, that you gotta run. Like, if your answer is no, you gotta run. Like, if you don't know. So Lana's saying, like, when you know, you know. When things are gonna change for you, essentially for the better. But if your love is in trouble, you know your answer. It's crazy. So, but we go into read back into Lana's, next verse, and it's, when you're good, it's gold. So she's good. She's down this path where she's good. Her good right now is gold. When you know, you know. When you're old, you're old. Hollywood and her, diamond on your ring. That's the soul you bring to the table. On a key and a minor key. It's just, it's about like this positive spin, like this good place that she's at after all of this, heaviness that we've been, kind of in. And then she's saying, like, she stops, and this is almost like, I guess, the bridge of the song, but it's really quick, and it's, if you don't know, and she speaks this, don't give up, because you never know what the new day might bring. She says it's so sweet. And it's almost like a point out to us, like, the fans or the audience, like, you never know. And if you're not at a place where you're good, and when you know, it's okay, you'll get there. Like just know that you don't give up. Like, there is a life worth living. So that heaviness that we were talking about in the beginning, the thoughts of suicide and stuff like that, it's not the right time. I don't know. I could be reaching again, but I feel like all of these themes really push and pull and tie back together, and there are conversation topics that just, like, were not missed or forgotten about here either. And Margaret is just beyond a beautiful song. And then this ending, and they pull in those Norman sounds. Like, come on. This next track is called Fishtail, and you guys, I really think this is where it just gets completely wild from here, okay? So with Fishtail, especially the introduction of it, it starts very chemtrails over the country club like energy. I say this because the overall theme in this song, it stands out particularly because of this. It's kind of this only callback towards chemtrails. Like, she's mentioned the Midwest, once before in the record very early on, and it kind of re-brought up in this theme. And towards this end, she, like, almost speed catches you up with kind of the vibes and energies from the past albums up until this point. Then we hit the heaviness of the production in Fishtail, and it sounds very dark, but just a game. So I find, like, the comfort of chemtrails is more like White Dress or the title track alone itself again. And then the production is very reminiscent of Dark, but just a game on a heavier level, because it's got more trap elements to it. It's got, like, that elevated Born to Die, essentially. And then she's playing in and pulling in the sounds that you got out of Norman Rockwell. Yo, that is a beyond, like, a genius lyric. Okay, so in, like, the mid-chunk of the lyrics within this song, Fishtail itself is a type of braiding skill for those that do not know. I did myself learn how to fishtail, but it's funny because braids in relationships are really connected towards sex and like, you know, this kind of play with sex that you do when you get braided. So she's saying like, don't say you'll braid my hair, and it's like in this context. And then she's addressing like, I know we have problems and I'll address them another day. And essentially like, because things are in black and white and she sees in technicolor, she says, I'll take my glasses off so I stop painting red flags green, is a call to their relationship. Like, I know she's also contributing to like why it is the way it is, because, you know, it's just so good. And I also really haven't talked about this at all, but there have been moments where she has talked about kind of like sex and stuff. Let the Light In is all about that, like talking about the positivity of their relationship, but she does mention it like, I'm just here for this for right now, like, and this, you know, kind of further expands on that specific relationship. I love the elements of production because it really like starts to pull you into the heavierness of the beat, and it makes you want more of that. And boy, do you get it. I feel like the Feelin' Hella Rare really goes back to like the positivity she has for herself as like a woman. She's just like me for real. Like, if you don't actually care to do anything about it, don't say you'll braid my hair. Even if it's not sexual, it's like, don't say you're gonna do something for me if you don't actually care to. Like, okay, Peppers. I feel like her lyric in Pepper saying like, we write hits without trying like all the time. Without trying like all the time. It just sounds like a very familiar lyric of hers. I'm not really sure where it's from, but it definitely feels nostalgic of some type. And the song itself is very like, it's not reminiscent of anything specific she's done as far as like in Born to Die or things like that, but it is just in general, like, she can still do this if she wants to. Even the Tommy Genesis feature, like, chorus, speaking about Angelina Jolie, feels like very a callback again towards the love she has for herself, you know, feeling like a goddess, feeling like an Aphrodite. She's just using an actress as like a metaphor for that. And Angelina Jolie is gorgeous. I don't know who wouldn't want to be Angelina Jolie. I just like that comparison. I don't know. I really like this song. It gives a very like, I don't give a fuck type of energy, but at the same time it does like, I think it might be the most like distorted from kind of everything, but if you really pay attention, it does flow with everything. And this is that like push of energy that you may have wanted or expected when you heard the ending of American Horror, but you didn't get it in the rest of the album. You get it like truly blown up and unpacked in like the last 3 songs. Peppers is, it's definitely an interesting song. It's nice because it's very like, you finally can let go of like this really like heavy subject matter and kind of just really enjoy like this song. It's a little even nonsensical. You can actually like dance around to this, you know, if you really wanted to. So it's really nice. And then I like the very like Californian inspired sounds that they end towards, you know, the end. Once her verse is finished up, it's the very like surfs up type of vibe. Yeah. But let's go into this very, very last song to talk about. And I want to say, like, I wish everybody had the experience of hearing this song without knowing that VB meant Venice Bitch. I feel like it might click a lot easy for a lot of people, but if you don't have too much context, or like you don't have like the flood of information that is the confirmed thing, you wouldn't really have the suspicion, I think. But it was really something to hear Taco Truck and not expect the Venice Bitch part. But let's get into this conversation, okay? It's interesting because she's almost talking about another memory, like, at the end, like, but it's just her personality entirely. She's like, okay, well, this is, like, really what it is. Pass me my vape. imagine if we actually gave a fuck kind of speaks to, like, you know what, part of her doesn't actually give a fuck. And wouldn't it be something for them to talk about, so her and her boyfriend? But it goes back to this repetitive theme that her and her partner don't talk about real shit or the real things. And that the truth of her, she does have a violence. And so then you go into this very insane flow. This song is funny because, like, she's basically saying, like, her personality, she still has a violence in it. And, like, she'll go crazy. And that's always been a part of her music. Like, there's a craziness to her personality. So, the heaviness in that drop, I think that's the heaviness that you guys might have been looking for in American Horror, but you get it here. And then you really start to hear the instrumentals of Venice Beach pull through. And for me, like, in my experience, I was unsure, but I could, like, tell something was familiar. It's funny because, like, you get the drop in the instrumental, and then you get this, like, almost like voice note, like, recording. I don't really think that it was a voice note recording, but it's supposed to, like, give the energy of a memory. And then it goes right into Venice Beach and the switch up and the confirmation with the violin that it is the Venice Beach beat. And it's like at this point in the song, like, all that real stuff we were talking about, she doesn't care anymore. She's just letting everything go and jamming out in this last bit world that, like, just completely closes out the record. It's crazy. You guys, this could be a reach as well, but I feel like in this, like, I don't give a fuck segment, she used Venice Bitch specifically because it's a callback to all those playful sounds, by the way, that we've been getting with Norman Rockwell. And it's a reminder, one, that she's back from California. She left California, she's back, and it is her home ultimately. And so she's using a piece of her home, essentially a memory again, and stamping it on the record, closing it out completely. And so you get this fluidity from the beginning with, you know, how the grants start, and you get all these violins and all these sounds to draw you in and pull you in. And then you get the blueprint with A and W, and it's like, this is how things are going to go, okay? You're going to have an experience, a slow burn. We're going to go through the heavy stuff. We're going to pull through. We're going to reach this sense of lightness, and we're going to show that self-love for ourselves as well. But we're also going to admit that at some point, we're not going to give a fuck. And that's where this point is at the record, and at the end, and at the heart, or like at the truth of things. Like, this, I feel like, also just speaks loudly towards the relationship that she's been talking about. Like, she, like, Venice Bitch literally says, like, oh God, I miss you on my lips. And it's speaking towards these desires of, like, screw all the things that we have problems about. Like, we have to do what we have to do right now, you know? It's like an addiction. It's crazy. It just, wow. It's just so impressive. And then in this specific piece, this is in addition to the Venice Bitch, but she's saying, if you weren't mine, I'd be, it cuts off. And she says, get high. Jealous of your love. Drop acid. If you weren't mine, I'd be, never die. Get high, drop acid, never die is very, it's a callback to, like, live fast, die young, be wild, and have fun. Like, deep down, back to the root of things, like, that's, like, kind of her thing. Like, you know, with all of the, like, ups and downs of things, like, you still have to live your life no matter what. So I really like that she put that play in there. And then Taco Truck closes out the entire record completely. And it's also, you can easily miss it, but at the end, the sounds of California and Norman Rockwell completely, like, dissipate. It's really, really quick. And it's almost like this distortion sound, and it, like, is like a white noise almost. And then you hear the faint piano one last time. And that's also how the record started before she started singing. So it for me, this record is completely brilliant because the amount of parallels involved within the record, that like all of these themes that we're talking about, the relationship, family, the sounds that call back to Norman, chemtrails, even, playful things like Born to Die and Honeymoon, like, even though they aren't direct, they are reminiscent. There are so many reminiscent things, and I feel like this has been the thing that has pulled everything together at once and wrapped it up into this, like, magnificent blanket and project. This could be me just doing too much, being an overly impressive fan, but I do think is like a study and like a deep dive on this record and everything that it's talking about. It's truly like beyond something special. And I do think that she learned a lot in her time in the Midwest, and she needed that time to herself. And this record kind of, by pulling in those sounds, closed out that chapter that was opened when everything happened with the Norman Rockwell era. Like, that was such a height for her, and then also such a low, and it's finally something she's talking about and discussing now. There is just beyond an amount of things to like fully unpack and learn, and for me, I can't wait to like continue experiencing this album and developing with it and like truly understanding it. So I really love her for giving us this album. I thought it was completely beautiful. I think there are an insane amount of, I know I'm repeating myself too now, that are just really impressive. Even that, like the repetition, making sure her fans are hearing things, making sure that there are messages being sent, just the lyrical content and how it flows, how the flow of the album is from top to beginning. And again, it just goes back to that like push and pull, this like almost boat on the ocean type of energy that like she brought to this. And the hard truth that maybe we shouldn't give too much of a fuck, but if we are light and we are love and that's what we have to give to people, we are going to get enough out of life if we show what's important. We can talk about the things that make us, we can talk about the things that hurt us, because these are all ultimately things that make us who we are. So I wasn't going to say it before, but I do want to say like this is a 10 out of 10 for me, and I commend the hell out of this album, and I can't wait for what comes next. I cannot wait to see her live again and experience all of this live. That is it though. I cannot thank anyone enough who has gotten this far in this episode for listening to this conversation, but I do hope that it was insightful. I hope that I took you on a journey with me. I know that it might be a little scattered and backwards, considering I did listen to it and stop and chat with you guys and shared my opinions as they came. And I do hope the things that I talked about and brought up as well kind of pulls through and began to like put pieces in together for you guys as well. Just to kind of show you bits and pieces of like the details of genius that I feel like are within the album. So that is all. Thank you guys again. Till next time. Bye-bye.